Harry does not deserve armed royal security. He probably doesn't need it. That is certainly the view of two good friends of mine, Ken Wharf, Diana's former bodyguard, and Di Davies, who is the former head of royal protection. They've both told me that Harry's demands for armed royal protection are to do with his ego. The idea that when he's in the UK, you have the SWAT team, you've got the blue lights, the police outriders, the helicopters, the whistle, you name it, stopping the traffic lights. And that's their view. And of course, the big thing, to feel royal when he's in the UK.
Yeah.
Because, of course, the recent trip to the UK and the Highgrove House summit, it went without incident. It demonstrated the family could travel safely. And in fact, even Fleet Street, the press didn't get a photograph. So it contradicts his argument. But, and there's a but coming, which is that ultimately you don't choose who your father is. And his father is the King of the United Kingdom. So you can give up as many titles as you like. You remain a target. And it's unimaginable that anything would happen to Harry, Meg's, my husband, or Archie and Lily on British soil. Obviously we don't want it to happen anywhere, but it's unthinkable, and it would be a catastrophe for the institution of the monarchy. So they don't deserve it. I'm furious that they might get it, but I don't see how you square that circle. That said, overseas, forget about it. You're on your own.
Hi, all. Kinsey Schofield here. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is world-renowned historian Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. And for the second week in a row, back by popular demand, the ladies love him, Mark Dolan, host of The Mark Dolan Show. Thank you both for being here so much. I'm so grateful to you. Rafe, I'll start with you. Details from the Duchess of Kent's will revealed. And let me tell you why I care about this. Because Prince Philip's will is sealed for 90 years. So I'm a little nosy, and I love that we are getting some insight into what was left by the Duchess of Sussex, £10,000 to Future Talent, which was the music charity she helped to create. And it supports young musicians from low-income families. That was an incredible passion of hers. She was a teacher forever. She said her children had no idea that she was royalty. They all just called her, by her name, and it was a very sweet and humble life that she lived. £5,000 to her grandchildren, her husband, 1.4 million, her jewelry to distribute according to her wishes, but he's holding on to that. Am I weird for combing over this and finding it so fascinating, or is that reasonable since the royals are typically so private about these things?
Everyone's always very nosy about the rich and famous and what they've left and who they've excluded from the wills.
That's true.
In England, your will is a matter of law, of public record. It's a probate, it's published. And so everybody's will in this country gets published through probate. But traditionally, the senior members of the royal family have, by special dispensation, been allowed to actually have their wills kept secret. The argument is, of course, it's more dignified if we don't know where the late Queen's money was going and so forth. So as you quite rightly say, with Prince Philip, there is a 90-year ban on seeing the contents. But even in 90 years' time, two judges are going to sit down together privately, open the will, and then decide whether they should make it public or give it another 90 years. So even in 2100 and whatever it's going to be, we may never see their content. So we've never seen any member of the royal family's wills really in the past. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, we don't know. We assume she gave most of her stuff to her daughter, the Queen. Traditionally, the monarch gives all of their property and all of their property portfolio investments to the heir to the throne, and then become, the next sovereign, so that you don't break up that wealth. So getting access to the Duchess of Kent's will is very interesting because we've never really seen it before. And there's quite a modest sum, £1.4 million, I think, in total. That includes a nice house in Kensington and other things like that. But yes, as you say, lovely to see her giving back to this wonderful charity of hers, Future Talent, and all of her godchildren. I think she has about 10 godchildren getting £5,000 as well.
Mark, Rafe just reminded me of the fact that we debate what Queen Elizabeth potentially, Prince Philip, the Queen
Hmm.
Mother left Prince Harry all the time because we're trying to determine how much he's still working with over there. But that
Yeah.
mystery does hang in the air, doesn't it?
Most definitely. Little did the late Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth, know that when she wrote a check for several $1 million for Harry when he turned 40, that money would be going via Harry's bank account to the Daily Mail.
I mean,
And little did Diana know when she drew up her will that she'd be paying Paul Dacre, not Harry Mountbatten Windsor. So it's a great irony. By the way, Duchess of Kent, what a wonderful person she was. She was
yes.
so beautiful, she was so graceful, and she was the very best of this institution. Somebody that was productive, gave things back, never put a foot wrong. Can you think of a Duchess of Kent embarrassing moment? Any howlers? I don't think so.
Absolutely. She reminds me of the Princess of Wales in that way, just
Yeah.
exquisite and under the radar, just giving back, like you said, truly living that life of service. Um, Rafe, was there issue? I mean, I know I apologize for not teasing this question earlier because I know that we probably all need to open up a book to get to the bottom of it. But I do remember when Diana died, she had left a significant amount of money to her godchildren, and her mother and sisters went in. And I think that they changed up the wills to ensure that most of it went to Harry and Meghan versus all of these godchildren she had. I remember that maybe it was in Paul Burrell's book or something. But are we privy to information like that because of gossip, or are we privy to information like that because potentially, I mean, whether right or wrong, she was not a royal at the time of her death, so the rules didn't apply to her in the same way?
Well, you're testing me now. I can't actually quite remember whether Diane. I'm pretty sure her will was kept secret as well in the entirety of it. We do know, of course, of certain bequests that were made and others, and that's because many people around her knew precisely who was getting what. But I can't quite remember. But I'm quite sure that hers. Although actually, now that I come to think of it, maybe it wasn't because she was no longer a member of the royal family. It's one of the few times you've got me now in my history here. I can't actually quite recall whether she was included. It was only in 2021 actually with Prince Philip that we got this idea of having a 90-year rule. And
Yeah.
because that 90-year rule came in 2021, we do have the wills for several royals who died between 1910 and 1923, because the 90-year rule has passed for them. So we have, but as far as I know, anybody after 1923, we don't have access to any of their wills if they're a member of the royal family.
I'm watching Mark Dolan Google this right now. Mark Dolan is going to, Mark
Are
Dolan is
you
going to,
ready?
yes, we're ready. Ready for this, Jelly.
Okay, I'm going to have to take my spectacles off because I'm getting to that age. The controversy over Princess Diana's will centers not on the will itself, but on a non-binding letter of wishes that
Oh,
accompanied it and a subsequent court-approved variation of the estate after her death. So she signed her will in 1993 before her divorce from King Charles. The bulk of her estate, worth around £21 million. What would that be, Kinsey? 25, $26 million
no, I
was
don't know.
left equally to William and Harry. Paul Burrell, her butler, ultimately received around $100,000 following a variation to the will. But what was interesting, the day after signing the will, Diana wrote a separate handwritten letter of wishes. 3/4 of her personal possessions, her chattels, would go to William and Harry. 1/4 would be divided among her 17 godchildren, and her jewelry, as we know, that's how it panned out, would pass to her sons for the benefit of their future wives. So it's quite an interesting thing. It says here, is this too much information now?
No, I'm
Okay, here
curious.
we go. After Diana's death, her executors, her mother Frances Shant Kidd and her sister Lady Sarah McCorquodale, applied to the High Court for a deed or order of variation. The changes included William and Harry receiving income from the trust earlier, while the capital remained protected until they were older, and also the letter of wishes not being implemented in the way Diana had envisaged. One of the reasons why the letter of wishes was not part of the will, lacked legally binding wording. So you were right. It didn't go in. And the godchildren did not get their chattels.
Rafe, I suspect that we probably know about this because it actually went to court.
Yeah, well, obviously there were people who weren't quite happy about that happening,
Yeah.
and but thank you very much, Google, and thank you, Mark, because there was a big blank spot in my knowledge.
I would just like to point out, for the avoidance of doubt, that when I pass, which Rafe and Kinsey, let's hope is many years from now, you will both receive my chattels. Rafe, you've actually already seen my chattels. We had a couple of drinks, and it's a long story. So Kinsey, you're getting all of the Elton John CDs.
Okay.
And Rafe, you're getting my liver.
Oh, nice.
Oh, fantastic. I do need a new one, so that's very good.
All right. Well, yeah, so interesting story there. And I do think we should end on the fact that the Duchess of Kent, what a life lived, and how sweet she is, and how much we do miss her. Let's discuss the search for the king's new top aide. Buckingham Palace will soon begin the search for a new principal private secretary as Sir Clive Alderton prepares to step down in May of 2027 after 20 years in the royal household. Often described as the king's most trusted advisor, the role oversees the king and queen's official engagements, provides strategic counsel, and helps manage major events such as the coronation. Rafe, 20 years in that house. I cannot imagine the things that Clive has seen between, Harry and Meghan, the death of Queen Elizabeth, the coronation. He has handled so many important issues over the last 10 years alone.
Yes, it's hard to think of another private secretary who's been in that role for such a crucial point for the royal family. Quite remarkable. Retiring at the age of 60 rather than you would have thought perhaps 65 or 67, but after a 20-year stint, people should obviously know that the private secretary to the king is the king's right-hand man, is his closest advisor, helps him with all of the critical issues that he has to deal with on a daily basis, as well, of course, as being the key conduit between the government and the palace. So whenever the prime minister has something to deal with the king, it's through the private secretary that they will go, and of course also with the state visits. And they've had in Sir Clive Alderton a really skilled man, very much an old school private secretary, somebody who, of course, Prince Harry called the Wasp. Somebody who was not a fan of welcoming Prince Harry back into the fold. In his memoir, Spare Us All, Prince Harry describes, three middle-aged white men without naming who they were at the palace. He gave them all different names, and the harshest one was the Wasp, which he referred to Clive Alderton, who he regarded essentially as being one of the great impediments to his ability to try to broker a rapprochement with the king. Now, who's going to replace Clive Alderton? Well, one of the contenders is obviously the Deputy Private Secretary, a man called Theo Rycroft, who is a much more warming relations with Prince Harry. So there are, of course, questions as to whether the current Private Secretary is leaving entirely of his own accord, or is this actually a sign of a sea change in the palace, a desire to actually warm things up with the Sussexes? We know that Theo Rycroft is very keen not only on healing the rift between the king and his son, but also between the two brothers as well, we're told. So we'll see how the petition is going to go up for open to the public, and anybody who's got the required skills can apply for the job. But he seems to be the one that most people think will naturally succeed. He's, of course, comes from a great dynasty himself. He's married to Fiona Astor, one of the greatest dynasties in America and Britain, once the richest family in the world. She's the half sister of Sarah Cameron, Prime Minister David Cameron's wife. So we can see the old British establishment and the elite is as connected as it ever has been. But they really are a power couple. He was very, very important. He served in the diplomatic service in France, was very useful for the King's state visit to France. The Deputy Private Secretary was also very good at warming relations with President Trump as well. So he's very, very much seen as a person who's a jet setter, an international type, and somebody who's warm to Prince Harry. So we could see a very different type of monarchy shaping up in the next tranche of years.
Mark, you understand. Well, I'll ask you this first. How important do you think public perception and public response is to the royal family? You know, those polls. Because in my opinion, my audience and your audience would be really unhappy to see Prince Harry welcomed back into the fold. So how is it as important as one person? You know, are we saying, oh, here comes the reunion because one person steps down? Or are there more things to consider, like Harry's behavior, consistency, trust?
Well, the words Theo and Rycroft should be enough to send a shiver down the spine of anyone that loves this country and loves the monarchy. Because Rycroft, notwithstanding his tremendous diplomatic talents, and he's got a great CV, is a guy that is reportedly trying to broker a behind-the-scenes handshake between William and Harry. Now, this is completely unfair on the Prince of Wales, because I think what's happening at the moment, under a rather energized and rejuvenated King Charles, is the return of Harry to the royal fold very quickly. No one thought Meghan and the kids would be here this year. We thought maybe Birmingham 2027. The timeline jumped forward by a year, presumably at the behest of the king. And Rycroft is going to enable the return of the Sussexes into the royal fold, and most concerningly, without terms and conditions. If there's a way back for Harry into the family, let's talk about that. I mean, I don't think you can do business. I know. I don't think you can do business with Harry as long as Meghan's on the scene, because she's pulling the strings. But if we're going to have a royal return, let's talk about it. Let's negotiate it. Let's have a legally binding document that says no more podcasts, no follow-ups to Spare or the Netflix documentary. So I'm deeply concerned that Rycroft is actually in the running to be Charles's right-hand man, because I think what you've seen from Alderton is a very different approach. Now, don't forget that Sir Clive Alderton doesn't really work for King Charles. He represents the institution. He's there to represent and serve the best interests of the crown. And that transcends whoever is on the throne. So it's not his job just to keep the boss happy. It's his job to protect the institution. And everything that we've seen in recent years has been outstanding from this guy, because first of all, he's basically been the CEO of the firm since Charles became king. And notwithstanding all the drama around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Harry, I think you'll agree that King Charles has had a great reign. I mean, I know those are two very big things to separate, but can you think of a moment that Charles has put a foot wrong? We were worried he'd be the activist king. Mm-hmm. We were worried that he would bang on about environmentalism and net zero. No, he's been discreet. He's kept his counsel. And let's not forget, and Rafe will agree with this, and you will as well, Kinsey, that triumphant speech to both houses of Congress in the United States at a moment when the special relationship was in real trouble. So Charles has been a good king. A lot of that is down to Alderton, who's been the stage manager, the CEO, the boss, the chief coordinator. Why has Alderton suddenly run for the hills, literally days after Harry gets into Highgrove House with Meghan and the kids? The timing is interesting. Now, I've got no evidence to say that Alderton has said, look, I'm not happy with Harry coming back into the royal fold. That said, if it's your job to represent and protect the crown, then Harry's return is a challenge to that. It's not good news.
Rafe, can I have your response to that? Because you know how much I value your opinion.
Yes, well, we have no evidence either way, but the timing is, of course, suspicious. Um, it certainly seems as if this was a role that Sir Clive Alderton thoroughly enjoyed. You had to watch him only when Andy Burnham became Prime Minister and Keir Starmer resigned to see him there greeting the Prime Minister, the outgoing and the new Prime Minister. Clearly loved his role. 60 is quite an early age at which to leave the position of Private Secretary, although it's a nice round number after 20 years to do. But certainly knowing full well the reticence and the desire to keep Harry as distant as he can from the palace, it certainly does seem rather strange of a coincidence. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. It does seem rather strange of a coincidence that this should happen at the same time. But do remember this, though. There is one person who's more important than the private secretary in terms of having the ear of the king, and that is the Prince of Wales. Prince William, of course, is in no mood to break bread with his brother. As far as we know, he doesn't mind if his father wants to reconcile with his son. But I think William is very much his own man. And if Theo Rycroft does succeed as the next private secretary, if Prince William doesn't want to have that warm rapprochement, it's not going to happen.
That's so important. That's a nice little mic drop moment, because I do think that my audience loathes this idea. They feel like Harry needs to publicly apologize. They feel like Harry's still on the warpath, which takes us into our next story. Mark Dolan, he faces an unbelievable legal bill thanks to his attack on the Daily Mail. Now, publishers of the Daily Mail argue that the claimant Harry and his team and their legal team handled the case in such an exceptionally improper manner that the court should require them to pay costs on an indemnity basis. The indemnity costs order would go beyond the usual standard costs, potentially making the claimants responsible for the vast majority of the legal fees incurred by both parties, although the amounts claimed would still have to meet the court's test of reasonableness. So it's not just like, here's how much we want. The judge would comb through that and say, this is ridiculous, or, well, I can see that you actually put in this work. We understand that their insurance covered a combined 16.2 million, but Associated said its costs are around 34 million. Mark, that hurts. I don't even like saying that number out loud. It's so big.
Most definitely. Doreen Lawrence, who was dragged into this case, I would argue, perhaps at the encouragement of Prince Harry, maybe to add a little moral authority to this case. This is an amazing lady who, of course, suffered the tragedy of her son being murdered in cold blood because of the colour of his skin. You do wonder why she was railroaded into participating in this legal action, other than the optics of it. I don't think Elton is happy. Liz Hurley, by the way, so she'll be bankrupted if Elton doesn't pick up the bill. Now, it's my understanding that Liz Hurley and Elton John could not be closer. They are the besties of besties. They holiday together every summer in the south of France.
Can you imagine? I'm sorry, but I have to say this. Billy Ray Cyrus in a Speedo next to Elton John in the Bahamas. Are you telling me that Liz Hurley and Billy Ray Cyrus and Elton John are partying together? Because that is a visual I never thought I'd see.
Well, it would be an amazing thing. I'm just imagining the duet. So look, yes, the bottom line is that what this has proved to be is a far bigger disaster for Harry than anyone ever imagined, least of all Harry himself. It's been a reputational disaster because he sues the one newspaper that never hacked, which was the Daily Mail. He incurs the wrath of the legendary Paul Dacre, who was the editor at the time of these allegations. Harry has annoyed Mr. Justice Franklin, the heroic judge, at certain points in the trial, saying it's not your job to litigate. That's why you've got lawyers. So the bottom line is that reputationally, it's been a disaster. Financially, it's Armageddon. I mean, what is Harry on the hook for? Let's get down to brass tacks. 10, 15, $20 million is what Harry is facing. So if conservatively it's 10 million, let's be nice, let's be charitable, then that's all of the spare money gone in one fell swoop. Has he got the cash? What does Meghan think of this?
Ooh.
And where does he go from here? This is an existential crisis for Harry. And I thought his reaction afterwards with the angry response to the verdict, which strangely Doreen Lawrence was a co-signatory of, but if you read the text and if you read lines like total whitewash, that doesn't sound like Doreen Lawrence to me. Sounds like Harry. So I think what's happened, guys, is that he sued in anger. You should never sue someone when you're angry. You got to have cool heads, calm, rational arguments, and it's always a risk. Instead, he's gone in like a bull in the china shop. He didn't learn his lesson when he sued the Mail on Sunday a couple of years ago and decided to cancel that in January 2024. He had to write a check for $1.5 million then for the Daily Mail, no doubt double that for his own lawyer's fees, and he comes back for more. I mean, I think the reverberations of this are going to impact Harry for the rest of his life.
I agree with you. Rafe, are we, if we believe that they're trying to build a way back for Prince Harry, are we under the assumption that Harry will change his behavior? Because you can't be in the royal fold and continue to fight with everybody, and especially continue to try to litigate the past the way that he does.
Yeah, but as I've said before, we're dealing with a middle-aged teenager in Prince Harry, aren't we? So
I
this
mean,
is a person who
you can keep
seems
saying it. I love when you say that.
That's
he's a
golden.
man. He's incapable of restraining his emotions and his outbursts. He's still behaving as if he's 16 behind the bike sheds. And she said this to me. She said that to me. Can you believe it? And there's a very real threat that they have here, obviously, if they do welcome him back in, because there is no contract he can sign with the palace that he's going to feel duty bound by if he feels at some point that he's being hard done by in some capacity. He's got a track record here. I don't know how anybody in the royal household feel they could ever have a conversation with him which they feel is private without fearing it will be leaked in some capacity or other. We have to thank the heavens that he didn't end up staying in Buckingham Palace on his most recent visit, because it would have been from Buckingham Palace that he actually questioned one of the king's judges' verdicts. That whole statement about whitewash, that would have come out from the palace. Can you imagine that? So
Yeah.
he is a liability still now in 2026. He's proving himself a liability to the palace. He just tried to, in essence, say that he was kicked out of the palace by the royal family, who basically revoked the invitation to him. So he's still up to his old tricks now. So he clearly hasn't learned a lesson. And I think it would be extremely unwise to think that there's any hope of him suddenly realizing how to play the game now, since he's shown no evidence or that he's inclined to do so.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm terrified. All right, this I guess this story to me is interesting because a Canadian viewer sent it to me, Mark. Security for Prince Harry's visits to Canada topped all internationally protected persons. Newly released records show Canadian taxpayers spent more than £500,000 protecting Prince Harry during his visits to Canada between 2014 and 2020. That's substantially higher than the roughly £330,000 previously reported, and accounted for about 10% of all the money Canada spent protecting internationally protected visitors during that period. I should say that those visits were while he was still a working member of the royal family. But Mark, I'm hearing from our Canadian viewers that they don't want to be responsible for Harry and Meghan's little ego trips, their faux royal tours. If Harry continues to try to do those types of things, that what we saw in Australia, Colombia, Nigeria, in Canada, now that they've seen those numbers, they're even more furious.
Well, and I can understand why. I have an unfashionable view when it comes to Harry's security.
You really do. And I love you for it, but you do.
Now, the Mark Dolan show, of course, the same with Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. It's not an echo chamber, and, sometimes we can disagree. So let me be abundantly clear. Harry does not deserve armed royal security. He probably doesn't need it. That is certainly the view of two good friends of mine, Ken Wharf, Diana's former bodyguard, and Di Davies, who is the former head of royal protection. They've both told me that Harry's demands for armed royal protection are to do with his ego. The idea that when he's in the UK, you have the SWAT team, you've got the blue lights, the police outriders, the helicopters, the whistle, you name it, stopping the traffic lights. And that's their view. And of course, the big thing, to feel royal when he's in the UK.
Yeah.
Because of course, the recent trip to the UK and the Highgrove House summit, it went without incident. It demonstrated the family could travel safely. And in fact, even Fleet Street, the press didn't get a photograph. So it contradicts his argument. But, and there's a but coming, which is that ultimately you don't choose who your father is. And his father is the King of the United Kingdom. So you can give up as many titles as you like. You remain a target. And it's unimaginable that anything would happen to Harry, Meg's, my husband, or Archie and Lily on British soil. Obviously we don't want it to happen anywhere, but it's unthinkable, and it would be a catastrophe for the institution of the monarchy. So they don't deserve it. I'm furious that they might get it, but I don't see how you square that circle. That said, overseas, forget about it. You're on your own.
Rafe, that's a very expensive, principle, as a security expert would say. And I do think that since Harry has stepped down as a working member of the British royal family, any sort of threat that he's acknowledged is one that are the consequences of his own actions. I killed 25 Taliban in Spare. Of course, you're going to have Islamic extremists now angry with you. How do you react to these? Really just the outrage from a Canadian viewer that's like this. These numbers really upset me in a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, well, I'm also a Canadian citizen as well, and a trustee of the Canadian Royal Heritage Trust, and former chairman of the Monarchist League of Canada's Ottawa and Toronto branch. So I have some knowledge of the Canadian situation, and Canadians don't like paying for jollies for people. And what we have had here is, yes, okay, they were working royals for some of these trips. So Canadians are perfectly content to pay for official visits when you're doing public service. But the fact is that even whilst they were working royals, they were making trips to Canada, which were entirely private in their nature. For one 3-day trip to Toronto to visit her friend Jessica Mulrooney, daughter-in-law of the former Prime Minister Brian Mulrooney, cost 10,000 Canadian dollars. There has to be a situation where you think, why on earth are taxpayers paying for private visits? You have a lot more leeway with private security firms in Canada and America than you do have in the UK. I'm pretty sure you can have armed security guards in Canada in a way that you can't have in the UK. And that was the real issue in the UK, was that private security in the UK cannot be armed, cannot carry firearms. I don't believe that's the issue in Canada, certainly isn't in America, obviously. And, the Canadians, are people who don't have the sort of celebrity culture that we're used to in America or that we're used to in Britain. And so the fact that of all the famous people that came to Canada, all the presidents, all the prime ministers, the single biggest expense was Prince Harry. That does stick in the craw.
I realize I'm cancelling myself with this position. Rafe, do you take my point that Harry does not deserve royal security given his horrible cruelty to the family, and he also does not merit it because he's given up his royal duties, but just in the kind of realpolitik of this, it's unimaginable that any harm should come to Harry on British soil.
But that's why he should. He should have his own security.
But they can't. They're not going to be armed. Is the big issue, I think.
But neither are you guys. Most people are armed in the UK.
But the point is that his security team aren't allowed to carry arms in this country. But Ravick has said every time he wants to come to the UK, as long as he gives them due notice, they will make a case-by-case assessment. And if they believe that he is deserving of security, he will get it. And remember this also, we have one of the world's finest security service intelligence networks here, both with GCHQ, MI5, and MI6. If there is a plot, if there is a threat, if they do think that the risk against Harry has been elevated, I'm sure he will get the sort of security that he deserves. But, as I've said for years, this is, and as you've said also, Mark, today, this is about status. This is about not wanting to be seen to have something less than a proper royal protection service around him. Because, of course, he could have gone at any point in a private jet. He could have gone to Balmoral any summer to go and visit the king privately. Nobody would have been any the wiser. You know, the Queen used to go all the time to Kentucky to go to see her friends who were horse breeders out there on private visits. This happens all the time, that members of the royal family engage on private visits to see people. There's no reason he couldn't have brought Meghan and the kids to see the king, and we would have been none the wiser. And the Highgrove summit shows exactly how it would have been done.
Mark?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. I mean, I think overall, you know, I'm in a real pickle about this because there is just no precedent for it. There's no moral or legal argument for it. But Kinsey, just imagine if something were to happen to a member of that family, any of the Sussexes, on British soil.
I just think that that Harry's not a target, and Whitcomb is. You know what I mean? I just don't think that he does. And they're on like MasterChef Australia. They're not doing anything. You know what I mean? So I don't.
Yeah.
I know
But there's
what you're
another
saying.
obstacle here.
Go ahead.
There's another obstacle here. We don't have enough security service people to do this.
That's
we don't
true.
have enough protection officers because we keep changing our prime ministers. And each prime minister needs to have a security detail. And they now have another one called Keir Starmer. And so, in fact, there was an article recently saying that because of Keir Starmer, even if they wanted to give Harry increased protection, they wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, they have to protect 9 former prime ministers. So they haven't even done the assessment that they promised Harry in December of 2025 because he's in the back of the queue. Yes, they will do the case by case per visit. But when it comes to any, you know, the idea of the government or Ravik changing their mind based on a new threat assessment, that's not going to happen until they figure out how they can manage the current predicament they have. All right, well, agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Follow my friend Mark Dolan's YouTube. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, you have a beautiful YouTube page as well where you continue to dominate with your content. So go follow my friends. I'll link them below. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys again very soon. Mark, it's gone dark where you are.
Yes, indeed. The light is dimming, and it's been a challenging broadcast because I jumped on at the very last minute, but the light is in my heart, but not around me.
It's true, but we love you for it. The light is always in your heart. Bye, guys.